Hello, hello. I'm Holly Holt, and I'm waiting for Michelle to join. So I'm going to invite her. Conversation that has really been kind of our own conversation. Yay, here she is. Hi,
Hi.
Michelle. Wow, I felt very close.
Yay.
I'm going to back up.
Hi.
Um,
Come close,
Hello,
Holly.
everyone. Hi, Kirsten.
Hey, Kirsten.
And modern art decides, lots of fun people. So maybe give people a moment to join. And I can't even believe how much I've been thinking about our topic of conversation today. I don't know about you.
I know. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's really fun because we're sharing emails, but then also we're getting emails and texts from people and just having our own side conversations. And then it's like sharing data and then sharing the data with each other. And I can't believe how much fun this whole conversation has been. Like
Mm-hmm.
people are really interested. And actually, I had a good male friend today that just this morning
Mm-hmm.
sent something that he thought would be supportive and interesting for our conversation today. And so I loved that too. Like maybe some of the men are paying attention. Maybe they're listening and not to kind of hijack what we're doing, but just to, maybe as support or out of interest. And so
Yeah.
that
I
felt
mean,
really
to
good
help
as
to try to
well.
understand, oh, this big thing is going on, and no one talks about it. And that was the feedback I got from a group that I meet with on Mondays of women who are in midlife and kind of beyond midlife, just saying, nobody talks about this. More people need to talk about this time in life, right? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's so much I
Yeah.
have to say. Where should we even start? Where do you want to start, Michelle?
Where should we start? Well, and I just, again, a big welcome to everybody who's joining. Thank you so much for being here. And if you have comments, questions, thoughts to share, because, we're all just kind of starting this conversation
Mm-hmm.
in this particular circle. And
No.
we are definitely not experts. Again, we're just like gathering data and having conversations, starting conversations. And so we'd love to hear from you as well, how maybe these conversations are going in your circles or um, things that you are observing or
Mm-hmm.
wondering about in your life in this very particular phase, season,
Yeah.
whatever we're calling it. But maybe we just start with like kind of why we came up with this topic of let's have a conversation about the resistance that came up when
Yeah,
we
that
started
term.
using midlife.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you got quite a bit of feedback because you put something out very specific using the word midlife, and mine was a little bit through the back door of our event, and so um, yours was probably double the amount that I had. Um, so we'd love to hear about what happened when you said, "Hey, what do you think about this title with the word midlife in it?"
Yeah, so I have a membership. It's a movement membership that is also seasonal, wonderful seasonal things. But primarily the focus is movement. We do different types of movement. I think all perfect, perfectly designed for a midlife woman. I mean, I am a midlife woman. I am also now, as of January, in medical menopause. I had a hysterectomy, so I'm just like thrust into that. It was a whole new world to try to understand, a new body. I'm a different person. And so how do I relate to
Mm-hmm.
this new person? How do I take care of
Right.
her? How do I get
Hello.
her to sleep? Like, there were lots of questions. And so that all influenced what I was offering, because I was finding that more, I'm just going to call it like a workout where I am a yoga teacher, but very intentional and mindful workouts with the alignment and all the good stuff from yoga were the most helpful. Like I had to get a little sweat on, I had to get my heart rate up. And when I did that consistently through the week, just 30 minutes, like 30 minutes, maybe 4 times a week, I, it made all the difference in my hot flashes, in my sleeping. And that's not a form of movement, AKA exercise, that I typically do. Um, so that was new for me. And then it got me thinking, because my doctor's saying, well, now you also have to be thinking more about bone density. You have to be thinking about muscle loss. Like, well, that's really sexy. Thanks. But it made me think about
Mm-hmm.
uh, my community. And most of us are women in this category of like past the halfway mark. Like we're in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s. Many women in the community are in their 70s. And so that felt really important. And I've known that, but it was like, it was just punctuated. We need to be thinking about our bone density. We need to be thinking
Mm-hmm.
about brain health. I mean, they're finding so much about working out in this way. Again, getting your heart rate up and getting aerobic, a little bit of a sweat. Like the benefits of that are pretty fascinating. And so I was going to rename the membership. And I thought, well, why not like be really smart with my marketing and just call out the ladies and say midlife movement and magic.
This is
And I was all
it.
excited, like, oh, alliteration, it's so fun. And I'm doing the good marketing thing and I'm naming it what it is. And like, it's just going to be so great. We'll really get to claim it. Well, thank goodness I put it out to them. We have a little community in the group, and I put it out on the page in the feed and just said, here's what I'm thinking of naming it. What are your thoughts? And then I had a couple of, I must have known somewhere. I was like, I should check this out. So I put a couple of other ideas. Like, I think there were 4 options, and midlife movement and magic was the first. And no sooner did I press send, I got an email back to me personally, and then comments in the group that said anything but the first one. The first one, but without midlife. And then it was just like, yeah, definitely take out midlife, but you could use movement. Like they were so hard return opposed to it that I was like
Yeah.
kind of taken aback, like, oh, wow,
So I
that
want
really
that
hit a
that brings me
nerve.
to, so as a word person. So we've got the body person, we've got the word person, and the cool thing I think about the cool thing about us is that we, I know, but this is one of them,
There's
is
so many.
that we understand that they're the same, right? That the body, the mind, and the emotions, which hold the whole thing together, are interconnected and actually part of the whole picture. So I looked up midlife this morning on the thesaurus, and I will tell you what it says. The wrong side of 40. That was the synonym for midlife.
What?
There was no other synonym.
Oh my God.
That was it on thesaurus, the thesaurus.
What?
So, right,
We need a thumbs
where, yeah,
down.
we
Like,
don't have,
where's
I don't know
the
if we have the
thumbs
thumbs down.
down thing? I gotta do a
So I
thumbs
want to
down.
say,
Oh,
of course, that is,
yeah.
and if you just look at, say, the movie industry, right? Women over 40, I mean,
Right.
they've been talking about it since I've been in love with movies and read the articles about movies about if a woman is over 40, she disappears. She's not on the screen. She's not the love interest anymore. She suddenly becomes the mom or even the grandma with the makeup on, who knows? So of course, that's all I can think is, of course, people don't want that. And so I know tomorrow we're going to be
Yeah.
on Clubhouse talking about, let's come up with some new names for this time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No
Thanks,
thumbs.
Lisa. Yeah, big
That
thumbs
is the
down.
worst definition. And then, of course, Oxford, their definition was very much more neutral. The central period of a person's life between around 40 and 65 years old. And yeah,
That's the one that I read.
I know.
The
Because
wrong
I'm
side of
thinking,
40. What is up?
I will say, as someone who from childhood on has been called an old soul, I was called an old soul when I was a child. It was really strange. I have, well, in a way, old soul, it was
Terrible.
fine. I was like, oh, that's interesting. What does that mean? When you're 8. Um, I have been waiting to be in my 40s my whole life. I have been, the minute I turned 40, even though I would say, other than maybe my adolescence, it was the most tumultuous time of my life. I'm kind of coming out of it a little bit now, at almost 54. I, it was amazing. It's, I feel like it's just the beginning of my life. So I think it's the right side of 40.
So that leads me, let me throw this in because this is what my a friend sent this morning. This is from a study, an extensive study that was done. This is reported
Mm.
in the New England Journal of Medicine. Found that the most productive age in human life is between 60 and 70 years of age. The second most productive stage of the human being is from 70 to 80. The third most productive is from 50 to 60. And then it goes on to give some other stats. And it says a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that at age 60, you reach the top of your potential, and this continues
Agreed.
into your 80s. Like,
Absolutely
how
agreed.
amazing is
Yes.
that? And that this is being reported on. I mean, it's that little
Hmm.
bias in the brain where now I'm seeing everything that's about,
Right.
midlife and this time frame that we're talking about. But I feel like it is having more of a moment. It's more of a conversation at this point. And even as you mentioned the movies, I mean, it's the kind of sad truth that we have to remark on it when there's an
Right.
older female star. But
Yeah.
the fact is, it's happening, and then we are calling it out. Meryl Streep,
Right.
Diane
Well, gosh, even
Keaton,
Jennifer Aniston
who's that
is in midlife
amazing
now,
British woman?
right? I mean, which is kind of like mind
Yeah,
blowing,
yeah,
but
right.
they're
Yeah, but we don't but we don't see like the
right.
real image of her. We see everything polished. And so I think that's where there's a little bit of, like, you and I have talked about how this is this kind of nebulous, like we're not old yet, but we're no longer whatever young is. We're in this real transitory time that I don't feel
No.
like we have great role models for it, because again, you either try to stay young
Yeah.
as long as you freaking can, and then, maybe at some point
Right.
you embrace the gray and you whatever, but
Right.
you
Because of
hold
the
on as long
bias
as you
towards youth.
can.
Yeah.
Yes. Not, and maybe, I mean, that's unfair to say. Maybe we
Right.
definitely also do it out of health and out of love for our bodies and wanting to care for ourselves. Absolutely. But yes, I think that bias toward youth and
Yeah.
beauty is really strong. I don't know what are y'all
I know. We're just
thinking?
talking.
How's
We're
this
we're
for
talking about
you
really
in the
our
in the
our
comments?
our kind of
Blah,
experiences.
blah, blah.
Um, but I think, and I'll just I'm going to be looking for comments. Hello, everyone. Just comment on what is your experience of this time, or what has been your experience of maybe your past it. Because I would say a lot of the women who are that, I would say they talk about this study that you're talking about, the most productive years. I think they're the most wise years at these later ages, because of course we have
Yeah.
a lifetime to draw from. And so women who are older than midlife, who are, I consider wise women, there's a calm that settles over. And I do believe that is, I'm so kind of excited about it after all the tumultuousness of my last 10,
Mm-hmm.
15 years, I would say, let's be real. Uh, I'm starting to feel energetically, physically, this sense of coming home to myself. In fact, I've journaled about it this morning, and that's what I said. The first half of my life, I tried to belong. Now I feel like I am home. I belong to myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I belong to myself so much that,
Mm-hmm.
I do feel the physical changes, like my joints and
Mm-hmm.
the sleep, there's
Yeah.
all that. There's the real
Yeah.
stuff, and then there's the metaphorical stuff. Um, Curious what study defined.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We've
what
got
did it say
some
about the
great
productivity part? What does that mean?
Yeah. So, right. And they were really talking big productivity. Like the average age
Mm-hmm.
of Nobel Prize winners is 62, which, leads back into what you're saying about, well, we have all of that wisdom behind, like we have the lived experience that provides so much more than you could get out of even study or trying to learn about. The average age of the presidents and prominent companies in the world is 63. The average age of pastors in the 100 largest churches in the US is 71. The average age of the popes is 76.
Yeah,
Um,
productive is an interesting
so,
word. I think it's
they're
more right. It's
it
like
is. It's not my favorite word, but
it's like, well, people who have come home to themselves and are able to serve in a different way. And I
right.
don't,
Yeah.
to just
Yeah.
take it away from that worldly side, because I tend to not live there most of the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Especially for a lot of women, because of how our roles have been defined. We're X generation, and so even our generation, our roles were still pretty defined. I think for millennials and the younger people, it's starting to change, which is cool. I'm interested to see how that pans out in the end. How it kind of evolves. Um, but we might not be out in the world as CEOs of companies or uh, doing things like that, but there might be um, a deep caretaking that might happen for ourselves or for others. Or I know in my case with my community, most of the writers that come to me are in midlife and beyond, because they are at a place where they want to go deep with the writing, and they want to kind of explore their stories. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell their stories. Absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking about the way you said, being at home in yourself. And I'm thinking, okay, so, I give myself the equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize. I am the president and CEO of my own self. I am
Yeah.
my own priestess. Like, can we just own and claim those roles as part of that wise self, the wise inner counsel that maybe we're able to relate to a little bit more, and just acknowledge, like, yeah, yes, I have so much wisdom, I have so much lived experience, I have so much to offer that isn't about being productive in the
Productive or
stereotypical
perky.
cultural use of the word.
Right.
Ew. Ew.
Never was perky even when I was young, but
Oh, that's funny. I have time for my choices.
And
That's a
maybe
beautiful way to
you
say
even know
it.
what your
Yeah.
choices are,
Deep caretaking.
separate from other people's
Hmm.
views. And I think that when you were talking about naming yourself, that is a big part of midlife is suddenly we are owning who we are that's kind of divorced from the world. Whatever the world says about people of a certain age, then we're like, well, no, actually, this is what I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is beautiful too. Coming home to myself is a great way to express it. It definitely feels like the older I get, the more I
Mm.
become more of the essence of myself that I
Playful,
remember from
creative,
childhood.
empathic.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, and so when you and I, Holly, were talking about this the other day too, and talking about this resistance, I had mentioned just like cutting straight to the chase of well, let me read. I had one text from a friend that I thought kind of summed it up well. Um, she said I was texting about the membership women who were like not midlife. She said I can see why the women don't like
Mm.
it. It made me sad, and so I was so curious. Like, tell me more. And she says it's a reminder that half of your life is
Yeah.
over. It made me think about all the things I've wanted to do but haven't. It made me think about death and this idea of being halfway there, hitting the halfway point, if anything, always indicated a nearing of the end and less of a celebration of the wisdom.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what was coming through for me is just ultimately the fear
So
of death.
simple.
Like, we don't want to talk about endings, death, um, loss, things ending or dying. It's not a part of our life cycle conversation. Our life cycle is birth, birth,
Yes. Yeah.
rebirth, birth, rebirth. And that autumnal, that winter time is just not a part of what we want to celebrate or even acknowledge. Like, no, I
Hmm.
can't I can't think about that for myself, for
Yeah.
the people and things I love. So I'm wondering how our listeners are feeling about that. Just it is a big topic to get into, but just kind of how that
I,
hits.
as people are thinking about that, I mean, it's a time of grief. That's the complexity of this time. It's this amazing time of coming home to ourselves. And at the same time, we have to give ourselves, if we don't have to do anything, but it's really helpful to give ourselves uh,
Right.
time to grieve what was, trying to grieve what could have been, or even the goals that we had that just aren't either changed or aren't really feasible in the same way they were when we were, say, 30 or 25. Birth, learn, grow, repeat. Yes.
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we don't give ourselves time to grieve anything in this culture, much less, yeah, right. We
Right.
get a week off
4 days.
work for an actual
The
death, and then the
timeline.
death of our
Mm-hmm.
other like younger life or the death of the way things used to be or whatever, however it is. Mm-mm. And it is
Not even
of
acknowledged.
course, and so much happens in
Yeah.
a lot of people's midlives. There are divorces, there are major career changes, there are deaths, there are physical changes that
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
mourned. So yeah.
Changes in identity, empty nester or yeah, a
Yeah, whether
diagnosis, some kind of
yourself or
health
someone
thing.
near and dear. Um, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a complex time, and complexity isn't really something also that people like to, oh, I don't have time for that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's the both and it's that quandary of can we embrace multiple seemingly contradictory things being true at the same time. And that's also really hard for us. The brain wants to go, no, it's this, name it, put it in the box. But this over here that seems opposite is
Hmm.
simultaneously true. So that's such a beautiful practice that I think comes through in both the movement and the writing piece. I think it's part of what we explore. Oh, yeah, that's different. That's different
Yeah.
than what we've been hearing. Interestingly, the one person I talked to who was really into it, she was just like, I think it's great. I love it, is 77. So, you know what I mean? She's just a little past the at least the
Hmm.
Oxford Dictionary definition. Um, so she was like, "Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
midlife. This is
And yeah,
amazing."
Jeannie says, when I heard midlife, I thought, yes, this is for me, right? So that is different than a lot of people. And this is why Jeannie is one
Yeah,
of my
right.
people, one of my peeps, Jeannie. So, because we,
Yeah, yeah. No,
there is
it's
this
great.
fabulousness to this time. Um, I,
Yeah.
I think there's this interesting thing that's happened to me more than once. I have this book that is by Sue Monk Kidd called When the Heart Waits. She's written all these great books. Dance of the Descendant Daughter is also a great one. When the Heart Waits, a
Yeah.
specific wait, it waits is specifically about midlife, and I just I want to acknowledge that part of it too. So there's the grief, there's the all the complexity, and there is this kind of volcanic quality that can happen, especially in the earlier parts of midlife, that maybe people who are just coming up to it, who are a little younger right now, don't know about yet.
Mm,
Like, our older ladies
yeah.
are like, oh, yeah, that was a really
Mm,
powerful time. But if you're, say, 35 or 30, you're like, oh,
yeah.
that's eons from now. And then all of a sudden, like she says, um, a whole cacophony of voices were crying out, a chorus of voices, orphan voices. Seem to speak for all the unlived parts of me. And they came with a force and dazzle I couldn't contain,
Mm,
right?
beautiful.
A new self struggling to be born.
Mm, that's beautiful. I mean, that's actually what Angie's kind of naming
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Her little burst at she was over 50 when she received her teaching credential, and over 60 when she retired from teaching and started a business
Yes.
with her daughter. Like, yeah, that impulse uh, and little kind of burst of
Yes.
activity at the beginning. And you mentioned like the younger maybe
Mm-hmm.
looking at this as a precipice. Um, that reminds me of how I think when we're at a little bit of a distance, maybe approaching, I know this is true in grief, maybe like a grief anniversary is coming up, or just something hard, an ending of any kind, a transition of any kind. When we're looking at it from that distance, it can seem, it's like the shadow. It's like, wow, this is big and I don't know, and so many unknowns. This can feel really scary. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and some dread. And then when we get to it and we get into it and, we're moving through it, that's the trick of the mind, right? It's often not anything like what we were, that dread that we had in our imagination, the story, the anxiety, all of that we had come up with or the brain had been so busy with. And it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is actually much more complex and actually really beautiful in all these ways. And again, I'm just going to say, I think that's where our
Yeah.
practices
Yeah.
become so important. When you're in your body, when you're like, okay, I feel the ground, I feel my structure, I feel my strength, I feel my softness. It really can provide a different perspective when you're
Mm-hmm.
really in your skin. And then through the writing, that's
Oh,
a huge part of what we're doing is that kind of like pause,
and what's
vantage
interesting
point.
is I was thinking about the writing process, especially I would say in the earlier part of midlife. So like right at about 40, my writing came back to me. I mean, I'd been writing in my job, but I hadn't been writing for myself for a few years because I was so busy writing for my job that I I ignored that part of myself. I also ignored the physical. I ignored it all. Let's just be real. I was very busy working. And so there was something in me that just said, you must do this. You must find yoga again. And I did. And you must find your voice through writing again, because it is your native language, really, even though speaking is. But this, and what I've realized over time, it's the embodiment. Like, I was frantically writing at that time, and it was an embodied experience. It wasn't just like an intellectual exercise. It was a whole body experience, and it still has remained that way. And I believe that if we can come into our body, then we can make room for that voice to come through. And so that's why I'm kind of excited about our event on Saturday, because it's marrying the two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, maybe we
I
should
know we could talk
land this
forever, but
plane and give our plug. I know. So on Saturday, this coming Saturday, 10 to noon Pacific time, your second season. And if you think you're in your third season, you can still come, please. Even if you think you're in your first season, it's really just a celebration of women. And we are going to be doing a movement practice, a warming movement practice. And then Holly will be leading us through some writing, sacred community time. But not feeling like you can't come. If you're interested and this feels really just rich for you, please come. Again, just a celebration of women. Both of us have the link in our bios, so would love to have you there. And then do you want to say something
so
about the
we will be
Clubhouse
on
tomorrow?
Clubhouse, which is another platform. I believe we're just doing audio. Is that Clubhouse? Clubhouse is audio, so you won't see our faces. And so if you're already part of Clubhouse, join us for that. And that's at 10 a.m., right? 10 a.m. tomorrow
Oh,
as
great,
well.
Angie. Yeah, 10 a.m. PT. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being here, everybody. Yeah.
I'm going to put my glasses on.
Blessings and just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
So
reality of midlife right there. Yeah. It's wonderful.
The reality of midlife. Yeah. Well, thanks for exploring this identity, just participating in the conversation and celebrating who you
if you
are,
missed it, or if
celebrating
you think a
women.
friend might enjoy this conversation, it'll be up on our pages pretty soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for being here. Bye.